Hey, everybody. Welcome to 1 Degree of Scandalous. This is the man over here, Kato Kalin.
Hello, hello.
I'm Tom Zenner. We're back. In this episode, we're going to be talking about some epic disasters and stories of survival by one family that are going to blow you away. We've got some great nutrition scandal talk and then military scandal with a top JAG officer. Has been in some of the biggest stories that were involved when we were fighting the Iraqi war.
Yeah.
So we're getting to two guests today, Kato.
Amazing stories.
Yep. So that's all coming up in this episode. And then maybe down the road, we'll get the Dalai Lama to come in here and explain what the holy hell he was doing with that young
Bite
child.
your tongue, Tom. Bite your tongue.
You know, I saw that story. The Dalai Lama was at he was at an event and a young child came in. Now, this is a guy in his 80s, okay, the Dalai Lama. And he comes up to everybody knows this story probably by now, but I'm really taken aback by this. I think people are kind of brushing it off. Oh, he's old. Oh, he's the revered spiritual leader of the Tibetan, tribe, whatever.
You nailed it, what you said, because I've always had a kind of revered Dalai Lama.
Yes.
And then I saw it. I thought to myself, is this real? Is that a lookalike? How can you come over? If you don't know the story, I think a 6-year-old boy or whatever, a young boy, asked if he could hug the Dalai Lama, and the Dalai Lama said, "Suck on my tongue."
Well, yeah,
he put his tongue out. He
let him kiss him on the cheek or something, and then kiss him on the lips, and then, "Do you want to suck my tongue?" is the exact quote.
Yeah, he said it was joking in his age, maybe, but
I will just say this: I don't think we'd let the Dalai Lama off the hook this easy. No. I mean, I know he has apologized. It's incredibly offensive what he did. I mean, are you allowed to punch the Dalai Lama in the face if you're the parent? I would.
Receive?
Who cares?
Receive total consciousness. Wasn't that in Caddyshack? Wasn't that? I got the Dalai Lama on my side.
Hey, I'm going to tell you a startling Dalai Lama fact that you're not going to believe, but this is true. Do you know how much he's worth?
Dalai Lama? Does he know how much he's worth? You're saying it because a billion.
150 million. Here's the question, Kato.
What? He's worth that himself?
Yes.
So he's also. I thought Dalai Lama was against money,
poverty, and whatnot. Look it up. Right? 150 million. The Dalai Lama is worth. So here's the question of the day.
Suck my tongue.
Would you take a vow of celibacy for $150 million?
Wait, no, never.
Okay, right?
Never.
I mean, I guess that's the blowback from it, right? I mean, it never works out well. I mean, why can't we just accept the fact this is not a religious rant? It's a common sense rant, right? But no kid should be put in that situation.
Yeah, I'm still blown away. I think we're going to hear more about the Dalai Lama story.
Yeah, we will. Anyway.
And by the way, the Dalai Lama, who he hangs out with, they rarely have cell phones, and he's immune to have anybody catch him doing something.
Wasn't Richard Gere tight with the Dalai Lama? I always thought he was talking about him.
Yeah, maybe.
I don't know. He's what, the 13th
Brad
or 14th
Pitt did
version?
7 days at Tibet. Did he meet him there? Anyway, everybody loves the Dalai Lama, but
all right.
This is
how's things
Scandalous.
In the life of Kato Kalin? I know you were in Orlando for a little while. You've been traveling a little bit.
Yeah. First of all, I did this Make-A-Wish Foundation. We did the car chase, basically. We have 110 miles. I went in this car chase. It was incredible fun. I did it with Chris McDonald, who was Shooter McGavin, from Happy Gilmore. Had an absolute great time. Became friends with William Fichtner. And I always wanted to meet William Fichtner, if you know who he is. He's in just Google him and IMDb him. And we had so much fun.
Please tell me there was
events.
A camera on you and Shooter McGavin for 3 days or whatever.
Yeah, many pictures. Check on Instagram, you'll see a few of them. But yeah, and you know what? When the people are always buying cocktails for people, it's
a good thing.
It's fun. It's a lot of fun. So, anyways, back there, I'm going to head out to Salem next week. Salem, Massachusetts.
That's your big trip every year too.
Yep. I'm going to do it twice this year. I'm going to do 2 different events, but yes. I'll do this. They built a Kato shuttle. I'll send you the picture of me taking people on tours as a joke and picking up people on a trip. It's a Mercedes shuttle.
Yeah.
And we're going to go around the entire city.
With you commentating the whole way.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I don't even know the city, but it'll be fun.
That'll make it even better.
Hopefully no disasters.
All right. We got 2 guests to get to. You ready? We'll do it right after this break. All right, Kato, let's do this.
I call him Full Metal Will. This is the guy, he can't handle the truth. He can handle the truth. Yes, he can.
Wow, my ears can't handle the truth.
I know that. It's a hot mic. That's why I did that.
By the way, I call him an FOK, a friend of Kato.
Yeah.
All right. And I wish he was a friend of mine when I lived in Phoenix for 13 years before moving to. I can't have enough good lawyer friends. I need more. Just in case something happens in Phoenix, now I got another one. Let's bring him in. Will Fishback from Phoenix via the world, South Carolina. We're going to touch all of this, but Will's got a fascinating background, Kato, and I had a chance to meet him earlier this week. And when I really started researching, his background and what he's been involved in, our listeners are going to be fascinated. So why don't you do a proper intro for Will and start off by mentioning how you guys met?
Well, Will, I was going to have you tell a story because I know that you had called me and said, I want to tell the story about how I met Kato. And by the way, Will, you went to also Tulane, right? You got your MBA at Tulane? I mean,
I did law degree and MBA at Tulane. New Orleans is a wonderful town. If you haven't gone, you should go. It's no place quite like it.
Yeah, that's for sure.
Well, I've been there many times. I think that I've shown my breast there just for beads. That's just me, though. And Will, you tell the story of how we met.
So I have a client who he had a dispute with an ex-girlfriend, and we wound up suing the ex-girlfriend. And as you know, anytime you're involved in litigation, there's lots of discovery and lots of documents and photographs kind of show up. And one of the associates came to me and said, well, in that one case we have, there's a naked picture of Kato Kalin. And I'm like, what? What did I hear that right? And he's like, yeah. And so, it was a picture. I went to law school in the mid 90s, the OJ trial, they read the verdict in between classes during my first year of law school from the OJ case. So I just grew up living the OJ case. So when somebody said Kato Kalin, of course I knew who it was. But so, literally there's a photograph in Discovery of Kato, and he's in a bathroom stall, and it's like somebody kind of like peeked over to get the photograph, and his pants are down, and he's kind of going like this, like he's drunk or hungover or something. So I said to the client, I said, why on earth is there a naked picture of Kato Kalin on your computer? And he explained that him and Kato grew up together in Wisconsin. And I said, well, you know what? I have to meet Kato someday. And so Kato, we went to Las Vegas for your 60th birthday party, as a matter of fact.
Yes, we did. We had an incredible time. But let me talk about the picture first of all. I wasn't naked. I have a buddy of mine that if you go to a bathroom and as you're in a stall, he'll take his camera and he'll do things of.
That's very appropriate these days.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, big trouble. But that's it. But not naked. But definitely pants down.
You were innocent, Kato. You were innocent.
Thank you very much. I did defend myself.
Well, that's Kato's way of saying, hey, if you want it signed, feel free to send it. He's got you. Will, thank you so much. And you guys have been friends for a little while. And, Will is a third generation military veteran. So clearly grew up with that military background. First of all, thank you for your service, Will. Amazing. You've got some incredible stories. You saw combat, but you saw it from a different perspective. And I think that's what's going to be so fascinating. A lot of people know the TV show Jag, right? That was on CBS. It ran for years and years and years. I guess only the good-looking guys get to be Jags, right? Apparently Will and that actor from CBS. So you guys were in the middle of court cases, literally, like crimes that were committed by U.S. soldiers and infantrymen and military personnel. And man, we could probably talk days and days and days about that. But is that something you chose to do? I know that you were probably toting a rifle when you first got there. You still were in the line of fire at times. But how did you become a member of the JAG Corps?
Sure. Well, I do want to clarify that, I was an attorney and I did have the good fortune of serving in Iraq and Afghanistan. And, everybody there is at risk in asymmetrical warfare. But I do want to say that, the infantry soldiers and the special forces soldiers and kind of those people that lived it every day, really, they're the ones that were really, at tremendous risk every day. And, for people like that, my worst day there was kind of their every day. And I do want to, kind of make that clear that they had to put up with conditions that are just unspeakable for most people. But what happened was I went to law school in New Orleans and Tulane, and I wanted to get great experience in the courtroom. And I knew that the JAG Corps was a great way to do it. And every service has its own JAG Corps, Navy, Army, Air Force, Marines, maybe the Space Force, I don't know. But what appealed to me about the Army is you could still do things like go to jump school, be a paratrooper, go to air assault school, do all kind of the fun stuff. So I joined the Army after law school. First duty assignment was in Korea. That was in 2000. And in 2001, I was at Fort Bragg, North Carolina, and I was on jump status at the 18th Airborne Corps. And that's when 9/11 happened. Actually, my boss went over in the first wave, and he was, let's say he was told to leave within 2 weeks by the commander of the 5th Special Forces Group. And in the Army, when your boss gets fired, guess what? You're going in his place. So I was in Uzbekistan, I want to say November of 2001, which is where we logistically kind of fought.
When you saw the towers go down, did you automatically know it was on? Like something was going to happen?
I'll say this: my boss at the time, a wonderful officer and lawyer by the name of David Hayden, kind of called all of us in the main gathering area there, and he said, "Life as we know it is over," and he was right. There's certain things just never went back to the way they were. The three of us can remember a time, for example, when you could go to the airport and walk up to the gate and meet somebody as they were coming off the plane.
Right.
It's little things like that are never ever going to happen again. And that day I went home and I started packing all my stuff because I just knew, particularly being in an 18th Airborne Corps and being at the time I was the operational law attorney. So that's law of war, Geneva Conventions, that kind of thing. So I knew it was going to happen. And sure enough, it did about 2 months later.
And the rest is history. So there you go. Your life's never the same, but you end up meeting your wife when you were serving overseas. And you know what, when it comes to scandal, I bet you saw more than your fair share. As someone that did what you did, you would not. There had to be tremendous conflict. I mean, you had a job where you had to apprehend, charge, and maybe sometimes put into jail or prison active duty soldiers who may have made a mistake. They may be bona fide criminals or whatnot. But what was that like? I mean, were you hated? Was it extremely tense, your interactions, because they didn't trust you or they were worried about you?
Yeah, Tom, that's a great question. And I think anytime, and this is really for lawyers in all scenarios, whether you could be the in-house counsel for a major corporation, and sometimes as the lawyer, you're kind of viewed as Dr. No, the person that always says, no, you can't do that. And that's just not good lawyering. That's not good advocacy. And that's a disservice to your client. And in that case, my client was the United States Army. So my job was to try to help commanders get to yes whenever they could. But if somebody crossed the line, you had to take appropriate action. The command had to take appropriate action to really maintain good order and discipline in the ranks. And that's particularly true in combat, because when you think about it, there's something that's kind of, almost ludicrous about all of it. You're going to take a bunch of kids aged, 18 to 22 who probably never, been very many places in their lives. You're going to give them, a rifle and live ammunition and kind of, turn them loose. And that's why good order and discipline is so important in the military. Is, people might think, well, why is all that marching and saluting? Why is all that important? Well, individually, those things aren't terribly important. But what they do is they ensure that the organization itself is disciplined, follows the rules, because when you're in combat, it's chaos 24/7.
Is it?
And you have to show up disciplined if you're going to not only survive, but also accomplish the mission that you've been tasked with.
Well, you talk about that, you have to be conditioned, but isn't it when you're in Iraq and you're fighting and they're the young kids, the conditions that surround you, does it just play with your mind? And I think you worked on a case where it involved rape and murder, and part of the defense, I think, because you were prosecuting it, correct? A case?
Sure.
Is that they're crazy in their mind, and they're going to go out, and liquor is never a good substitute for anything, that bad things will happen in a group where I believe some soldiers were actually killed the parents, raped the daughter, then burnt her to death, thinking that they were going to get away with it. And you were the prosecutor in this case, and you're thinking, I think part of the defense was they're saying, hey, they're guilty, but this is what happened and why. Now, do you agree with that part?
I did not agree with their defense, and I appreciate that they had attorneys who were doing their job to advocate for their clients, and that's the way it should work in an adversarial legal system. But you're talking about the what we often call the Mahmoudiya massacre, which is actually kind of a misnomer. It actually occurred in Lusafia, Iraq, but the AP reported it as Mahmoudiya, so it just kind of the name stuck. But you're right. A group of soldiers from the 2nd Brigade Combat Team of the 101st Airborne Division raped a 14-year-old Iraqi girl, killed her 9-year-old sister, killed her parents, and set the girl's body on fire to make it appear as though it had been the act of some kind of sectarian violence. In Iraq, by virtue of how Saddam ran that country, he kind of kept a lid on tribal and religious divides that went back centuries, if not millennia. And once he was gone, it was, there were a lot of scores to settle.
Yep.
But But in any event, you're right, Kato. Their defense was the conditions there are terrible, and they were terrible. Yeah. That unit, I think, had suffered more casualties than virtually any other unit. At the time, they were in an area south of Baghdad called the Triangle of Death. And it was just an incredibly lethal area, and they were called upon to do some very dangerous things.
Yeah, and I want to mention, you mentioned Triangle of Death, and I don't know if Tom knows this. My sister lost her son in the Triangle of Death with an IED. So, and I know what that's like. It was just horrible. 22-year-old kid, and it's a sad thing. And like I said, he was, full life, but it's a tough thing for young kids to go out there.
And Will, you had mentioned scores to settle, right? Yeah. And I was fascinated. I was traveling all the time back then when this was going on. So I was always reading on the airplane. And the stories that would come out of that region, they're just indescribable. You saw it, you experienced it. But it was the Shias and the Sunnis, right, who had lived together, who had coexisted for a very, very long time. But like you said, when Saddam Hussein wasn't ruling anymore, there was chaos. And they were settling scores. They were abducting people and sawing off their hands and just doing the most insanely inhumane things that you could possibly, drilling drill bits into their head. I mean, the torture that was going on is like, you can't even make it up. What was that like? Just seeing that level of hatred, because I know you dealt with it. You have a great story where you were forced to kind of mediate a situation between, right, Shias and Sunnis with no real experience doing this. And here you're thrust into a situation that literally is life and death. So could you give us a little bit more background on that one? Because I read about it. It was unbelievable.
All I can say is that it's there are times it's kind of incomprehensible, the things that human beings can do to their own fellow human beings sometimes. And it's driven by things like, unfortunately in that case, religion and tribal allegiances. But Iraq was, you're right. You had the Sunni, the Shia, and then on top of that, you had the Kurds in the north. And so Iraq was kind of a country that was kind of cobbled together after World War II. I believe it used to be a British protectorate. And so it was kind of three areas that really kind of didn't necessarily belong together, but were nevertheless put together nonetheless. But the reality is, anytime you're with somebody else, you're in a group environment and somebody that they don't look like you, or maybe they don't, worship, don't have your faith or what have you, you still have to find ways to kind of, sit down and work it out. And in my case, as it happened in Iraq, the Sunnis, all of the judges in Iraq were Sunnis. All of the cops were Shia. And so the cops and the judges hated each other, if only because of that religious schism there. And we couldn't get the judges wouldn't prosecute cases because they said the police weren't doing their job, and the police would say, well, the judges aren't doing their job. And I just said, enough. Let's all sit down. We're going to meet together. We're all going to have some hot chai or tea, and we're going to figure this out. And we're all going to sit in the same room, and we're all going to, complain and air it out. And after that, we're going to work together to make this work. And I think at the end of the day, we did make some progress there. Probably not as much as I wanted, but it was progress nonetheless.
Well, you do know that could have gone south at any minute, right?
Yeah,
were you prepared? Did you have some armed guards by you? I hope.
I go to these meetings with a Bradley platoon in tow. I'm not stupid, but I mean,
what would be harder? What would be harder, brokering a peace treaty there like you did, or going to Washington, D.C. and getting some politicians to get along?
I would say dealing with the snakes at the D.C. Viper pit would be far more difficult. Give me a bunch of sheikhs and Sunni and Shia folks any day of the week over politicians.
Well, so how does a military law affect like third-party groups? Because America's in a lot of conflicts. There's often mercenaries that may not be American. How does that work?
Kato, that's such a great question, because in many ways the law is kind of catching up with that, because we've all heard of things like Blackwater and things like that, kind of the private contractor groups, and when notions of things like the Geneva Conventions and the Hague Conventions were formed, it was kind of with the basic understanding that for the most part you had one nation state versus another nation state, meaning the British Army versus the French Army, or the British Navy versus the French Navy. And they weren't great for dealing with situations where there's what we call asymmetrical warfare, meaning an organized fighting force versus kind of a guerrilla fighting force. Likewise, I don't think, although you did have private contractors, you had private contractors on the battlefield going back to at least the Civil War. but not in the same numbers that you had in these two conflicts, where the contractors were actual combatants. So in many ways, the law is kind of struggling to catch up with that.
Yeah.
And it will eventually, but again, it does require the nations, it requires consensus among, the various constituents of these treaties to figure it out.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's going to happen anytime soon. But
hey, did you have a great advantage in these courtroom settings? Because I'm doing a book right now. I'm knee deep into this government overreach issue that is going to just blow people away when this book comes out in a couple months. When you see what the government at the Justice Department level is able to do with all the resources that they have, and if you get in their crossfire, it's over. You have no chance, essentially. And this is a very, very famous case, has something to do with the Varsity Blues recruiting scandal. So I'm in the middle of this, and I know, what can potentially happen. Could you call in the FBI? Did you have access to the CIA, the IRS? Did you have unlimited resources as you try to prosecute these guys? And how could the fight be even?
Unfortunately not. We did have one of the soldiers in the Mahmoudiya case he'd actually gotten off active duty days before we were able to kind of charge him formally in the military. His name was Stephen Green. He was eventually charged through the U.S. Attorney in Kentucky, because Fort Campbell, the 101st Airborne is located at Fort Campbell, Kentucky. And so that went through the U.S. Attorney there in Kentucky. But I had some limited interaction with the FBI and the DOJ then, and they were wonderful professionals. Don't get me wrong, but they kind of had their own bureaucratic monsters to tame, so to speak. I think where I found the most difficulty with the DOJ and the FBI was trying to get them interested in prosecuting civilian offenses that occurred if they weren't big. For example, you've got a giant warehouse somewhere in whatever, pick your city, Balad, Baghdad, wherever. And a civilian contractor, steals $100,000 worth of equipment and sells it to the Iraqis and pockets the money. It would be very difficult to get the U.S. Attorney interested if the dollar value was that low. And so if it wasn't like big, they weren't terribly interested. And I understand there's prosecutorial discretion and you have to decide where you're going to allocate your assets. But if anything, I had a difficult time getting them interested to intercede where I thought they needed to intercede, because a lot of people got away with not only just really heinous things, but just crazy things, and they couldn't be prosecuted for it because I couldn't get the DOJ involved. At one point, we discovered some guy had been pretending to be a retired one-star Air Force general and going around the country getting VIP accommodations, and everybody's treating him like the king of Siam.
So
he was a complete.
You're saying I should stop doing that? I shouldn't do that anymore?
Don't do it anymore.
Okay.
I've told you, Tom.
I've been warned.
I was like, you guys are going to let him get away with this? He's defrauded the U.S. government out of how many hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it was just kind of like, whatever. But no, Tom, you're not wrong that once you kind of get in the crosshairs there, it's very difficult, and that's why it's I know my profession is not the most popular one on the face of the earth, and there's plenty of lawyer jokes out there for good reason. But I do like to think that lawyers are there to do what they can to keep the system fair and to make sure that, God forbid you, me, or Kato, well, hopefully Kato, ever kind of fall into the machinery of a criminal prosecution, that hopefully we have good lawyers to make sure that the process is fair for everybody.
Well, I'm going to lighten up a little bit here, because as a rumor, I want to see if Will knows this is true or not, that Oprah Winfrey actually went to Fort Campbell, but she thought it was because that made the chunky soup there. Is that true? Now, Will.
No, she did come there. She gave
people cars, correct? She gave people cars.
It was like cars, or it was like vacations or something.
That's right.
I can't remember, but that's one of those things that gets kind of the bean counters at the Pentagon very paranoid.
Yeah,
but I thought it was great. I mean, why not?
Will told me some great story. He says never go paratrooping. He's a paratrooper also. He goes, never go paratrooping with a friend if he stutters, because you have to pull the cord on. You have to pull the cord on 3. It's 1 1 1 1 1 1 1 2 2 2 2 2.
Words to live by. By the way,
you're thinking of somebody else, I'm afraid.
Hey, good Oprah joke. I thought you were going to go KFC route when she went to Fort Bragg, Kentucky, but that was hilarious.
Why do they keep changing names, by the way, Tom and Will? Is this 25% now is what is a decline in getting soldiers now, and we've got it's at least 25%. I want to get your take on this, Will, because I'm really into
you mean the recruiting numbers, right?
Recruiting numbers are down, and we've got Ukraine, then Taiwan now being invaded possibly by China. What is your take on all this, and why are we changing names of certain things? Is the woke thing killing us in military?
Could you maybe add like how ask me about the existence of God while you're at it, Kato? I mean,
but I want to talk
question.
It is, but you served and you saw war and you got the AK-47. What is going on in your opinion? Why are we losing recruits? And I'm really pissed about Lloyd Austin, and I really am. I don't want to get you in trouble, but. Something.
Well, I have no connection to the military anymore, so there's no. So a couple of things. I think relative to the recruiting issue, it's unfortunate. There are many ways I think we can probably make adjustments to get people in that might not otherwise get in. For example, if a kid screws up and gets in trouble as a youngster, and gets in trouble for whatever, shoplifting or doing other things, you should be able to kind of look past that and say, let's give that youngster a fresh start. That should never be a disqualifier if they can show that they've kind of made efforts to reform themselves. When it comes to the issues of obesity and things like that, I just don't know what to say other than, that's never a good thing. And I could say as a lawyer, going back to your question, Tom, about kind of maintaining credibility, the way you get you obtain credibility in the Army as the lawyer is, you show, hey, look, I can run just as fast as you guys can. I can carry a 50-pound rucksack just like you can. I can shoot better than you can and do all those things and show that you're up to the task. And so, I do think that's unfortunate because part of military culture is, everybody, having a certain level of physical fitness. The Ukraine thing is here's my general take on it, Kato. There'd be times when I would be sitting at the mess hall in Iraq. I'd be watching whatever CNN, whatever was on the TV there. And I'd be watching what was on the TV, knowing that it was completely the opposite of what I was seeing with my very own eyes. And so that's the only insight I can offer into Ukraine is whatever you're probably seeing on TV is.
Yeah. But does that mean it's worse there or not as bad? Which way are you going with that?
They just had the facts were never right. The analysis was never right. There's Michael Crichton, who wrote Jurassic Park and a lot of other novels. He had a theory on this, which was if you ever watch a journalist report on something that intimately, they inevitably get it wrong. In fact, there's times that they almost transpose things so that cause and effect are switched. But then we assume that same journalist is competent in a report on, say, the situation in Palestine or Ukraine or the economy, and the reality is they're probably not. So I just view everything there with you just have to have a healthy dose of skepticism and make your own decisions.
It's called fake news.
Yeah, fake news. And believe me, the woke culture has seeped its way into the military in a big way. Oh yeah, it's a major problem, in my opinion.
I'll say this: it is. One of the things I'm very proud of with the military it does a wonderful job of getting people who are different races, genders, religions, geographic regions together and making them part of a team. It's exceptionally good at that. I think that needs to be lauded and applauded. And I think anytime you engage, well, let's just say that I believe strongly in teamwork and making everybody feel like they should be included. I think sometimes, that can go sideways.
I got to catch up, man. I think it's okay for people to have their feelings hurt every once in a while when you're defending our freaking country.
That I agree with.
Look at what our veterans have done for us over the years, and now we're worried about everybody's feelings. Here's our problem right now. We're soft. We're a bunch of pansies. We're weak. We don't know who our enemies are, but they sure as the hell know who we are, right? And you see all the movements that they're doing right now. It's because we're so vulnerable and weak.
I think when Will was there, the moral compass was correct. The moral compass is wrong now. That's I think it's wrong. Our moral compass is wrong, and I come from a military family. My father, my mother, my sister's son. So, you know what? if we're not tough and strong, we're going to get walked on.
Yeah, and that's what we built this country on. But we could go on and on.
Tom, I do want to say one thing. You're right that being uncomfortable is just a part of being an adult, and having your feelings hurt that just goes with the territory. I agree with that, but it's a tough thing the military has to deal with, and I think it's probably dealt with it better than any other, I think, aspect of our society, and I think it deserves credit for that.
Let's hope so.
Yeah.
I guess we're going to find out in a few years if these numbers stay down or if we can't defend our country. Hey, Will, was there ever a situation where your life was in danger? Were you threatened by military personnel that you were prosecuting?
That I was prosecuting? No. No. Typically you wouldn't take their weapon away, but you'd at least remove the firing pin and deny them access to ammunition. And they were always, they had escorts and things like that. So no, I was.
But I meant more like, hey, I'm going to get you when this trial's over, that kind of thing.
I mean, that's always a risk. I think that's a risk for a civilian prosecutor.
Yeah.
It's easy to find somebody. Anybody can figure out where most of us live if they look hard enough. So no, I wouldn't say that. I mean, if anything, like everybody else there, you were, if somebody wanted to lob mortars into the cantonment area at 6 a.m., they didn't care whether or not you were a lawyer or an infantryman or what have you.
So yeah, and you had a weapon with you while you were there the whole time, right? An AK-47. I mean, I've seen
not an AK-47, an M4 carbine, but the AK is the preferred weapon of the enemy. Kato.
By the way, that gives new meaning to the phrase "order in the court."
Yeah,
the lawyer's armed.
Yeah.
Do not have a round.
Well, I know I've seen pictures of you with a weapon while you were in Iraq, right?
If I will say something, the Iraq was the only place, because we built the courtroom out there in Tikrit. It was like made out of plywood, but it was a courtroom. And it was the only court I've ever been to where the lawyers and the judges all showed up armed.
Hey, we're not letting you off this hot seat without talking a little scandal here. What was the percentage of crimes that you dealt with that had something to do with the fact that there was no alcohol for the most part in Iraq? Was drinking a problem? Did they get access to it somehow? How many crimes were associated with that, or drugs? Yeah.
Very, very, very few. It was typically you could get it, but it was not easy to get. You're in a Muslim country, so it's not like they had a liquor store where you could load up on cases of Bud Light or something like that. But
Bud Light, please, aren't you woke?
I would say, alcohol. Well, bad example of Tom's.
Bud Light, please. Will, Jesus, come on, give me a Miller Light.
But
Kato's from Milwaukee.
I will say this, that if you wanted to barter with the Iraqis for alcohol, cigarettes, hashish, you could do it. I mean, they gladly accepted cash and other things.
Muhammad Light, very good beer. Muhammad Light, I'd like one of those, please.
Hey, Will, you got to give me an honest answer here. Dead summer, what's hotter, Baghdad or Phoenix?
Oh, shoot. Well, since I'm wearing body armor and a Kevlar in Baghdad and other places, I'm going to go with Baghdad. At least I can wear shorts here.
Probably less AC there as well.
And I would talk about Will also, Tom. I don't know if you know this. He's also a triathlete. He stays in shape. Now, Will, are you going to be doing any triathlon soon? I'm getting off. I'm getting you off the hot seat here. I can see you squirming. You're squirming a little bit with Tom. Like you're going to have to swear in.
Every time Tom says, "Hey, Will, I can't let you off the hot seat," he just kind of
he's like,
brings it up one more notch here.
Jesus, you're in the witness stand.
What's it feel like?
Yeah, I was going to say I've never been cross-examined like this, Tom. This is actually a lot of fun.
It's a good training regimen.
Yes,
it is. Yeah, seriously, I might fly you out here to Phoenix to keep me on my toes.
Oh, he's coming out there. He's coming. We'll both be out there.
So no, I've kind of largely retired. My wife is still very active in it. She's a ranked triathlete nationwide. She'll do the half Ironman in St. George next month.
The what?
And
it's
then
called?
Well, there's full distance Ironmans, and then there's a half Ironman, which is called a 70.3. She'll do the 70.3 in St. George next month, and then she'll go back to Hawaii in September or October for her third appearance at the Ironman World Championship.
My wife, not to brag, but she also did the Ironman. She actually slept with Robert Downey Jr. So that's I draw the line right there. She slept with Robert, and please,
Kato,
that joke, please don't. I don't. That joke is mine. Anybody watch?
Don't repeat
keep
that. Okay,
that's mine.
Just because Kato said it doesn't mean it really happened.
For editing, please.
I don't want that one. I'm going to keep that one. It's part of my act.
Hey, by the way, Will, we've done 40 episodes. I think Xingyi's entered at about 39 of them as maybe part of a punchline. She's such a good sport. She's amazing. Third generation military. Is there going to be a fourth? Do you have children? Would you encourage them to enlist?
My wife and I don't have kids. We have dogs, and that's plenty.
Okay.
Like that. Military dogs.
I'll tell you what, man, you'll hang on to a lot more of your money. No kidding. Enjoy the Biltmore area, Phoenix, even more.
Yeah. I know that we Will's got it probably go to a case right now, and I'm so honored that you came on the show, Will Fishbach. Some of the questions, by the way, I came up from Will Stump, gave me some questions, people thanks.
Well, I was told to give a quick plug for Will's book right here. Yeah. I Wanted Sex, She Wanted Sax, the trials and tribulations of a 60-year-old man dating online. So pick it up at Amazon.com.
That's a great title. Is that a mutual friend of yours? Or who is it?
Yeah, you met him actually.
Okay, love it, man. I'm going to pick up that book. Hey, thanks so much. Find us when you come to LA, okay?
Oh, please. I'll actually be there. I think I'll be there in June or July for a birthday party. Likewise, when you gentlemen are in Phoenix, please let me treat you all to dinner.
Before I leave, I got to say, Will also had a question that when you don't even answer it. He goes, in the military, is there a handbook where the mess hall is, or does everybody just follow the others at chow time?
Yeah, that's a very stupid quote from a few good men. Well done. You looked that up on IMDb, Will.
And Tom, you said you maybe saw him when the guys performed in Phoenix, correct?
Oh, yeah. So I was at the big Victory of the Podcast tour in Phoenix. Well, you asked a great question. Now that I put two and two together, I mean, Will did sound like a lawyer, all right, when he was asking Connolly and Dylan and Charlie Sheen and Doug Ellen this question, but it was a great question. Why don't you repeat it real quickly?
Oh, so
the floor is yours.
Thank you. So we went to that podcast for the gentlemen who were kind of the alumni from Entourage, and then Charlie Sheen was there. My buddy's birthday, and he was a big fan of the show, so we bought him a VIP pass and everything, and so and they were just so generous, and they opened up the audience to questions, and I said kind of rather flippantly, given the box office success of Top Gun Maverick, when are we going to get Hot Shots Part 3? And then
Charlie loved it. Yeah.
Well, they gave kind of a quasi-serious answer. I guess David Zucker, the guy that produced Airplane and the Hot Shots movies, had actually kind of asked about it. But I think my sense is a lot of folks revere that movie, as they should, because it really did kind of reestablish, kind of the idea of a box.
Will, you know what? Here's the setup to that. Do you know that I put David Zucker on the phone with Charlie? Obviously, Charlie knows him. And you're asking this question, and I put him on with Kevin Connolly because David was with getting the entire crew back together.
Yeah.
That wrote Pat Proft, all the people that wrote the Naked Gun movies and Hot Shots. David asked if Charlie would be interested in doing Hot Shots 3. So there may be something in the works, but it's funny that you asked that. You could have asked me directly because I'm the one on the phone with David.
That's so
putting
funny.
him on with Kevin Connolly.
Charlie told that same story.
Yeah.
So look, I just want a cameo. That's all I want. If you
right.
make that happen.
And Kato got married in David Zucker's backyard.
Yeah,
so you got
married
that connection there as well.
I got married at David's house.
I didn't know that.
Yeah.
No, it was classic. Almost a year, by the way.
Yeah, and we're still registered at P.F. Chang if you want to send something.
By the way, those movies were all written by good Midwestern guys. I think Pat Prost from Minnesota. Zuckers are from Wisconsin, right?
Yeah, Milwaukee.
Yeah. All right. All right, counselor.
Thank you,
so much, man. Really appreciate
Gentlemen, always a pleasure. Again, look forward to meeting up with you when I'm in LA or you're here in Phoenix.
I'll see you in Phoenix soon, my friend. I'll see you.
Okay, well, thank you very much, Will. All right, Kato, we're going to take a quick break, and then we're going to bring in another guest. Weather scandal. Weather scandal. Yeah, weather scandal at the highest level. We're going to break it down. This is a fascinating story about something that you've probably seen and you just didn't put two and two together. We'll be right back.
I'm predicting 7 inches.
All right, Kato. Double the pleasure, double the fun. 2 guests today. All right, and I mentioned weather scandal. And you're going, what the hell is that?
Yeah, I was thinking, is Fritz Coleman coming on the show or what?
You're going, weren't you a
Dallas
sports guy? Were you
Ravens?
jealous of them? I tried doing weather one time. I tried it. It's not easy.
Do you ever see the girls in LA, how they hire the weather girls?
Of course.
This is like they go
They're all
beyond
Ford
how to-
models.
It's like, yeah, that's it. That's it. They're talking. It's like, who listens? And no one watches the weather. They just watch them. I mean, they're very smart. Every station has their own.
That might be the only redeeming quality of local news left right now.
I don't go to
beautiful.
Tom doesn't go to Hooters for the food, folks.
All right, in studio, a good friend of mine, Grant Denham. Grant, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Tom. Thanks for having me, Kato.
Great
to be
to
here.
see you.
Grant, I always ask guests, especially when they're here for the first time, what's your first memory of Kato? Was it the trial? Have you ever run into him in a club here? Any experience meeting him in the
Get
past?
close to the microphone for this answer.
It was the picture from the urinal.
That Will mentioned. The one that
Somehow I
circulated
saw
all over
that.
the place, right?
Yeah,
It was the trial. It was the trial shoot. That was in the early 90s, right? 92,
early-
93.
yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then, so stay right here, Grant. So we
Yep,
don't want to
yep,
lose
yep.
you. Okay. So let me set this up, because when I mentioned weather scandal, I mean, this is a freaking unbelievable story. And I know this story because I did a TV piece with Grant. It was amazing. Maybe we'll talk about how I tracked him down. I did stalk you a little bit.
Little
didn't
bit,
I?
little bit.
It worked, and we're very good friends now. So I don't recommend it. But
Tom
it
was the Doppler. He's
Like, who is this guy calling me? I've got
And he's
3
got-
voicemails now.
The blip was that Grant and Tom found him.
He's rather persistent. Okay, so this takes place primarily in 2018, maybe a little bit in 2017. And, we've been inundated with rain. We're all complaining. We're all spoiled here in Southern California. A little rain, it's a great thing. It ended the drought. The hills are looking beautiful. They're green. There's still snow-capped mountains on the San Gabriels. But this was back in the middle of the drought, where fire damage and fire threats were constantly out there. And if you live in LA, you're affected by fire somehow. It's hit you in some way. So there was a big fire called the Woolsey Fire, and it took place in Malibu, and 2 or 3 of these took place in Malibu. And my daughter went to Pepperdine, and she was at Pepperdine. She played soccer. My daughter Brooke was there for this whole time, and she was affected by this as well. But there was a very, very famous show. Or excuse me, very, very famous photo. And if you're listening to this, go to YouTube and find this episode, because we're gonna have all the photos up, so you have to see this. This is unbelievable. So Grant and his wife Cassie lived in Malibu, and I'm gonna let Grant tell the story, but the Woolsey Fire was coming. It was coming from the valley. It was coming over the hills, the Santa Monica Mountains, and it was dead on heading towards Malibu, and there's nothing you can do when that thing's on its way.
No, why is it called Woolsey? Is it something I don't know?
Well, name it. They have names for it. Maybe it's an area of Malibu or something.
Wow,
it really
well,
doesn't
yeah,
have any
Grant will
significance.
no.
Yeah, but so if you're in Malibu, you got to evacuate. Right? And there's not many places out of there, right, Kato?
Yeah.
I mean, you're taking the PCH, or maybe you're going to the 101 and going into the valley, but that's where the fire's coming from.
Exactly. That was closed down.
So Grant, bring us to this instant, and the photo's going to go up right now, and you're going to see what Grant saw. But who made the determination in your household? Because Cassie's not afraid to express her opinion. Whose idea was it to leave right now? Because you had your son Jake was
My
very
wife,
young at the
actually.
time.
My wife, to her credit. You
Okay.
set it up so well, Tom. So basically, I was driving home that night from Santa Barbara, or the day before, and the fire was roaring through that area. Kind of knew about it. And then Friday morning, we woke up, and it had to have been 5, 6 in the morning, and flip on the news, and there's this massive fire just coming and roaring into the Malibu area. And your first thought is, okay, it's a wildfire. You're in this neighborhood. We lived in Malibu West, kind of out by Trancas Canyon, Zuma Beach area. Thinking, I'm thinking, I can stay and fight this. The neighbor down the street is an amazing volunteer firefighter, saved probably 6 homes in the neighborhood. And I was kind of like, I'm going to stay. We're going to stay. And my wife, in-laws were calling, parents were calling. You guys need to leave. They're watching this at a national level.
Grant, just to interrupt you for 1 second, what the hell gave you any idea to think you could fight this? This is a blaze. What did you have, a fire truck in the backyard?
Not individually, but there were several neighbors that we were close with that were staying. I knew they were, because I talked to them, and I knew they were staying. And so they had commercial fire equipment, right? So I thought, this would be fun. This would be a time to take a little adventure and step up. But then, obviously, talking to my wife, and at the time, my son's, got to be 4, about 4 years old. And it was a family first safety issue. Right. And so we packed up the car, took the essentials, right? Passports, computers, a few items, and we hit PCH. And shortly thereafter, probably 5 minutes down PCH, it's just a dead standstill. You
Right.
can't move.
Right. Had you even made it to say where Pepperdine is or Vaughn's or the grocery store?
This
or
was
anything?
5 years ago, but recalling it pretty clearly, we were already stopped around the Pepperdine area.
Okay.
It was already jammed up.
Yeah.
It was pretty bad.
And you're heading towards Beverly Hills, right? And that's still going to be like maybe 12 miles.
Yeah, one lane, but the other lane's clear, right? Because no one's going into Malibu. Everybody's going out of Malibu.
Yeah, if you're familiar with PCH and that long stretch of PCH, they actually had the other lane closed.
Okay.
And so
for fire department.
Yeah,
for
so you couldn't
emergency
even
personnel.
go over and use the other lane.
Right.
That would have been the northbound lane. And it wasn't until later they actually opened that up. And there's a median at some parts of that, stretch of PCH anyway. So we're driving, and this is where the story gets interesting. So, me, look, I'm not a patient person when it comes to driving. So I'm trying to find the shortcuts, and there's little, I get on the shoulder and I do things to be a little aggressive to speed this up because this is my worst nightmare. It literally took 6 hours to get into Beverly Hills from PCH. But my son, almost turning 4, he's 3.5 at the time. Our son, he has an accident, and he's still in diapers, and so goes to the bathroom. I'll just say it in the diaper. We got to get out of the car, so we're at a standstill at this point. And I'm like, Cass, and I'm driving. I'm like, Cass, there's a trash can right over here, and so she jumps out, throws the diaper in the trash can, changes his diaper, and we look behind us. And it is the most unbelievable. You'll see the picture. We'll put it up. Right. It's the most unbelievable photograph, and it's epic.
Yeah.
It's terrifying, but it's also magnificent.
It's apocalyptic is what it is.
Yes.
It looks like the world is ending, basically, behind you.
And my wife, in all her, photographic brilliance, she's an amazing photographer, went up through the sunroof and took the photo. And we had other photos as well, but this one was just amazing. Mm-hmm. And so at this time, we still had and I didn't mention this, we have no reception on PCH. There's no cell coverage. Everyone probably just had the signals jammed up. So we're just crawling and crawling and crawling, and it's just nauseating, barely moving. Finally, as we make it into, Santa Monica area, more in town, we're firing the picture off to several people. Mm-hmm. And one of the people that I sent it to was Doug Ellen. And Doug Ellen puts it onto his Twitter. And it just starts to go viral
That's when it
that
just took
afternoon.
Off. Yeah.
And we ended up at my brother, Rob Ellen's, brother-in-law, Miley's house in Beverly Hills that night. And by that evening, I was overwhelmed, inundated with messages, calls, text, emails from every major news outlet. And by this point, you had, celebrities all over the world reposting, retweeting this photo.
Yeah, Sharon Stone, Tom Brady, Gigi Hadid. Right, it's unbelievable.
Do you own that photo?
We own the photo. Yeah.
So you can. I know this for a fact because of newscasters I know. You can get money for this. I don't know if you did that, but
Well, that's the whole idea, finding a way to monetize this photo, right? Because it's epic.
Right.
Yeah.
At the time, it was tough to do because it was very emotional. We thought our house was gone. We didn't know what was happening.
Right.
I hadn't
And
been
keep
through
in
this
mind, there was
experience
people that
before.
died in this fire.
Oh, yeah.
And hundreds of homes were destroyed, including your neighborhood. Weren't there homes?
There were 6-8 homes in our neighborhood was burned. 2 people in our neighborhood actually passed away in the fire.
Yeah, this is a bit
because
legit
they didn't
tragedy.
leave, correct?
They didn't leave. And so it was pretty it was emotional, right?
Sure.
And so to pick the story back up, we didn't really know at the time how to monetize it. One of the Drudge Report, Wall Street Journal, AP was calling me. It just went around. And at the time, I was said, just give us credit, put it out there. And we tried to do some stuff later with it, but nothing really came to fruition.
Did you know when you took the photo, when Cassie showed you, I'm assuming she did it on her phone, or did she have a real camera?
It was her iPhone.
Okay, she showed, hey, Grant, check this out. I mean, did you think, man, this is unique. This is special. This could have legs. Or were you thinking, hey, that's great, Cass, and now let's get to Beverly Hills and save our lives?
If I only had that insight, we would have put a watermark on it. We would have really done a lot more to stamp our name onto it. I think that was kind of part of the problem. Doug had, we talked later that night, Doug had no idea either. He just kind of put it out there. And so as it went viral, we actually lost the credit for the photo. And it wasn't until later that people traced it back to us. And then we were out, the next couple days, we were at a restaurant, we were here or there, and people were literally talking, you took that photo, you took that photo.
Yeah,
It was unbelievable.
Kato, it's easy to talk about this in a lighthearted moment, but you've been through this. I mean, where you've lived, I mean, the fire thing is real. And if you're affected by this, you're worried about your neighborhood, you're worried about your neighbors.
Yeah.
I live in Manhattan Beach. you guys all know Manhattan Beach. So on the Strand in Manhattan Beach, which is probably 28 miles from Malibu. Now, if you look to the west, you can kind of see the lights. You can see Santa Monica. My wife Shonda and I, we were walking on the Strand. And luckily, Brooke was out already, right? She had made it to Huntington Beach where she was staying with some teammates, but I could see the flames. I could see the flames I have photos. I'll put those up too now. I could see the orange glow. I could actually see the fire in Malibu. That just shows you how crazy and intense it was.
The people don't understand. I live in Toluca Lake, Burbank, which is the valley. That fire, you could have your car overnight. The ashes are on your car. And people don't know the ashes blow over. And, when you see your car, it's like, oh my God, my car is filled with these ashes.
Sure.
It's amazing.
It looks almost like a little layer of light snow dusting.
Yeah, so Doug Ellen, can I tell the okay, so of course, Doug Ellen, the creator of Entourage, we know Doug, Connolly, the whole crew over here, Ramble On, the big show, and Rob Ellen, the owner of Podcast One. Rob and Doug are brothers, and Grant and Rob's wives are identical, or are twin sisters. So you guys are very, very close. You've known the family for years. You're heading to Rob's house, I would assume. Right? In Beverly Hills, and this thing happens.
That's why this is a 2-for-1 show. Now I get to see where Center goes. He's always thinking, oh, twins.
But Grant, this does show you instantaneously in real life the power of something going viral in digital media, right? You lived it. You got a taste of it. To think celebrities were touching this, moving it along, and this thing just... Were you watching the likes and the follows? Did it affect your social media following? Did you pick up a few?
Unfortunately, and I still to this day, I should probably change this, but to this day, right, I have a private profile. I don't post that much. I try to not really live on social media and online. I probably should, because it's a way of life, and it's a way to promote your business and market yourself and build a brand. I just never really had an affinity towards that. And so at the time, I didn't have any real public profile and open network. And so I think my Twitter went from maybe 300 to 400 followers to 700, 800. But again, that was really a disconnect between when it went out.
And it wasn't you that posted it. I mean, when Doug posted, that's when it took off.
Well, and also, thank God you've never been in another disaster in your life.
Thank God that was the only thing that's ever happened.
If that was only
Do you
the
just
case.
thank your lucky stars every night thinking, man, I'm so glad I didn't experience a mudslide or another fire or anything like that?
So should we go there?
Let's go there. You're
What?
not going to believe this, ladies and gentlemen. This man and his family has survived three major disasters. You could make a movie out of all of them.
All in a year.
In the span of 1 year. Yeah. You're either the luckiest guy in the world or the most unlucky, and we could talk about that later, but let's talk about disasters 1 and 2.
Well, so it starts with 1. Let's go to November, December of 2017.
Before you, what is the order of this now? We're
going to start with the first one.
Okay, so the Malibu fire wasn't the first, but
this was a third.
Kato, when you're involved in this many disasters, you got to go chronologically.
Yeah.
You just have to.
What's number 1?
Number 1. So 2017, November, December, living in the Bel Air, Westwood area, and there's this fire that came through the Bel Air Mountains. And if you recall, it was up on Moraga. And if you drove on the 405, remember those fires that were on fire? So we were nestled up there in the hill, and we get a knock on our door. And again, we were kind of monitoring the fires from the night before. And we get a knock on the door in the morning. You need to evacuate. The fires are coming in. And it's like, really? I mean, we're here in the middle of LA. And so we left for a couple days, came back, everything was fine. And then fast forward to January, so a couple months, to 2018. Moved to Montecito, and we settle into a nice little place just off Olive Mill, just west of the 101, right down, walk by the ocean.
Just down from Ellen's house and Oprah.
Yeah,
near Santa Barbara.
We took about a fraction of what those estates look like. But it's cool. It's a nice little place, and we just literally 7 days settled in, and we wake up at 4 a.m. And this is absolutely the way it happened. Woke up at 4 a.m. to like rumbling and sounds and bangs. And as soon as light, the sun came up and it was dusk, went outside and there's just mud everywhere. And walked down to the end. So literally I'm walking now and I'm in 2, 3, 4 feet of mud. And I'm walking down our street to Olive Mill, which goes all the way down to Butterfly Beach to the Four Seasons. And it was just a corridor for this mud. And went to the overpass where Olive Mill so Olive Mill went over the 101. The entire guardrail to the 101 was down into the 101. It was filled up with mud where I could jump into like 15 feet of mud. That's how high it came up. Range Rovers in the 101, cars that were basically in the forms of rocks, just metal balls.
From rain, correct?
From rain.
The rain.
So
the rain.
we had the Montecito had the fires prior to that. And so there was all this dry debris and
nothing to stop the mud
nothing to
flow.
stop. And then there was a lot of rain. And so that rain basically caused this massive once in a 100-year or whatever you want to call it, terrible mudslide.
And that caused death and destruction.
24 people lost their lives. People literally in the middle of the night had boulders come through their homes and ripped them out of their bed.
And so they probably found bodies buried in mud months later, correct?
There were 2 dead bodies at the end of our street that I was walking over and had no idea. So the
Oh my
second
God.
day, there were 6 police down at the end of my street, and I walked down there to what's going on, and they're uncovering dead bodies.
And I'm wondering how they, if they're, I don't know how old they were. Can you imagine? How do you die from that? Obviously, mud comes
Crushed,
but,
probably in some instances.
Oh,
And
but I meant the people that were. Do you think anybody was sort of like caught in the quicksand? Of
Probably.
that, and they just know that they're going to.
Yeah.
because you can't
buried
run
in mud.
out of it. You can't
you're-
move,
yeah.
and there's no place to escape. And what you were there? Was it just huge boulders that were just rolling down the mountain too with the mud?
There were boulders, the size of an F-150 truck, right? Or the size of a guest house. I mean, I'm not kidding. They came from hundreds, thousands of feet up in the hills, mountains, and just came roaring down.
Did your place get hit?
So we did not, and we were saved by the 101 because we were west of it. So the 101 was a low spot, which took all of that mud and debris. So when you walk to the 101, it was. I have pictures. We'll put some up. I could jump in. The mud was so high you could jump in, and it'd be like jumping into 10, 15 feet of mud.
Well, you die if you jump in too. Maybe you don't come
Right.
out.
Wow.
So who's
But-
the bad luck? You or your wife?
We'll blame it on me. We gotta blame it on me. My wife's perfect. No.
Kato, he's married. Of course, it's his fault. What are you talking
It's
about?
your fault.
Okay,
So we were trapped for 4 days. We had no power. We had no water. We had no, we fortunately had some food and water, and the military came by. Helicopters were, evacuating people. We walked around, and eventually they cleared enough mud we could exit to the 101 and get out of town.
unreal.
So it took 4 days. I mean, it took more than 4 days, but 4 days before
us
anything
even
to get
be able to leave.
So was there power? There's nothing.
Nothing.
Wow. So you had to
nothing.
eat whatever you had in the house.
Yep.
Like cereal. Well, no milk. I mean, in the refrigerator. That's not easy with a young child.
Right.
Right.
Absolutely.
Yeah, and also, so
Everything spoils too.
Okay.
Yeah,
so that
I
was the fall of 2017,
So that was January of 18.
January of 18.
So the first Bill Bel Air fire was, November, December of 17. Then we roll into January of 18, the mudslides happened. And then fast forward to November of 18 was a Woolsey Fire. So within, not the same calendar year, but within basically 12 months, we went through 3 crazy natural disasters. 2 were absolutely devastating to the Southern California area. I mean, I'm not going to say once in a lifetime, but let's hope so. But it's, very rare to happen.
it's very bad when the emergency unit people actually know you by name. Weren't you Montecito? What's going on here?
Grant had a disaster punch card. After the third one, what do you get?
Exactly.
Hopefully something for
Free
you.
sub sandwich.
It's the membership. So.
Oh my God. All you could do is kind of make light of it, but you do have to, it has to cause some moments where you guys just sit there at night and going, holy crap. I mean, we could have been killed. We could have been one of those people that was trapped and couldn't get out. I mean, God is really like looking after us here. Maybe there's some great things coming down the road, but what does that do as far as like just everything, your perspective in life when you've lived through those things, and you got to be extremely grateful.
That's a great question, Tom. I think that when it comes down to it, it makes you appreciate the days you wake up and you breathe. It makes you really appreciate those days, and you're thankful for those days. We were never... Yeah, I mean, look, the mud easily we could have been in the wrong place and could have woken up buried, or, your family ripped out of their room. The fires, unless you stick around, they're coming. But, we were impacted in a way that I had never been touched by a disaster like that before. And so it definitely makes me and made our family appreciate just waking up.
Well, you've got a mudslide. You've had the fire. I think earthquake is next for you. It's a possibility. Earthquake is next.
So everything happens in threes, Kato. So let's
I'm
just
saying,
let's just hope we're done for a while.
Yeah.
Kato, the man who's been through hell.
This is earthquake, California, and you've never gone through an earthquake. Well, you must have gone.
No.
through an earthquake.
Well, I mean, look, I felt a little.
Yeah.
Well, there was a decent sized one a month ago. but-
It's got to come up all the time now, right? And people talk about how lucky you are, and
Right.
I don't want to live by you. And I bet the jokes get a little bit old, but
And I'll
what are
bring
you
something
gonna
up for Tom here. I don't know about you guys. You got earthquake insurance, right? Probably for your place. I don't know but I just read.
check.
I just got it, earthquake insurance and theft insurance, and this is what's weird about this with my policy. For my deductible, if there's an earthquake, I don't get paid for anything unless there's an actual theft during the earthquake. I think it's a really bad policy.
Kato, we're gonna get you new
gotta
insurance, Kato.
You've got to really read the fine line. I'm not paid unless there's a robbery during the earthquake. What's going on here?
Kato, the good news is there's no crime in LA, so you don't have to worry about that happening.
No crime in LA.
Yeah.
There you go. Yeah.
Oh man.
Did it ever make you think, let's get out of here? Is there any place safer? But disasters happen everywhere. You
You know,
never
there's people laugh when I say this. No utopia, right? So you can go somewhere to say Florida, and you've got hurricanes. At least you know they're coming, right? You've got a lot of tornadoes and disasters in the Midwest, which are a massive surprise. I think the problem, I think California, the chances of being in a wildfire are very small, right? The percentage is very small of actually being impacted by a wildfire. And a mudslide is even more of an anomaly. So that's also what's so crazy about it, is that it happened that we were in both of those natural disasters also within such a short period of time. I think if you live in Florida, you go there expecting to probably have to evacuate for a hurricane.
Sure.
I would
At
think
some
so.
point, if you're on the coast,
Right.
You're in the Fort Myers,
Right.
Miami, Fort Lauderdale.
Wisconsin. I'm from Wisconsin, and the tornado. There's a tornado season. They used to have a tornado watch at colleges. They have that's a big
Right.
drinking thing where it's this 2 weeks you just get totally hammered.
Yeah.
But because you wait for the tornado. But I've been through many tornadoes.
Sure.
I mean, let me ask you guys a question. Do you ever think about or worry about going through a wildfire in California? Probably not.
I don't, just for where I live.
Right.
We're not going to get them to Manhattan
But
Beach.
does it cross your mind that you could be in an earthquake?
Absolutely.
All the time.
Right.
But I
And they
actually
do-
was in a fire, a very bad fire. I was golfing in Burbank at a place called DeBell. DeBell is a golf course, and it's up in the hills of Burbank. I'll never forget this, how I was golfing with a buddy of mine, and we saw the fire. And we were golfing, and we said, well, we'll finish the golf. So we saw from golfing hole number 3 to 5, we were in the middle of this, and then the fire just went ballistic. And we were like, actually worried. We were walking,
Sure.
we didn't have carts. We saw how fast the fire went at this golf course. And you can get trapped inside this thing. And the fire department came out, and then they evacuated. But I saw, it was like August, and I just saw how fast the fire
moves.
it was windy, how fast it moved, and then we start feeling the heat, and we said, let's get out of here. And I
think that'd be the thing.
I remember that, how scared I actually was.
That would be so hard to fathom how fast these move, because generally it's super dry, it's warm, and it's windy. That's what get these fires going. And then, here they're started by the utility companies so often. And the damage that's been done in
That's
wine
right.
country is just tragic.
It's devastating.
When you consider what some of these family businesses for many, many years, have built and developed, and then boom, I mean, we don't really know how bad it is, but this fire comes through and just wipes out towns. It happened.
Well, and personally, I'd rather get swept up in a tornado, go through a flood, go through a hurricane, that get burned alive, or go through smoke inhalation. Right? If you have to go and you're gonna, pass in a disaster, fire is the
Sounds
last
like a Grant's got a new drinking game. How do you want to die?
By the way, give me a ballpark number. How many times you heard the joke where somebody would say, hey, did you buy a lottery ticket or something like that?
A couple, not a lot. I always think I should, though, right? Because it's just somebody's got to win.
Yeah. So Kato, he survives 3 epic disasters, but then were you a little worried when that stalker, Tom Zenner, was trying to get a hold of you?
I'm like, who is this guy calling me, right? I'm like, I got to Google this guy. And then on the next thing, I'm like, I'm going to call him back. He seems like a decent guy.
Yeah, so I wanted to do this story so bad because I was developing the whole 1 Degree brand at the time, and 1 Degree of disastrous made so much sense. And I was already talking to the Weather Channel, and this thing is still going to happen. The COVID shut it down, basically. We had a deal with the Weather Channel, and then things fell apart after. But I just had to do this story. It was the perfect pilot for what I wanted to do. And I want Grant to host these now. I mean, you can tell. Telegenic, he's got the amazing amazing voice and he's incredible storyteller. So we do need to get that going again, either as a podcast or a TV series.
Well, it's sort of unending because it's constant disaster. The 1 degree of disaster.
Good point, Kato. You will never run out of them,
Yeah.
right? There's always, and so many people, it's an emotional thing where they will talk about it.
Yeah.
I mean, it impacts lives.
And disasters don't always have to be natural disasters, right? We can have disasters with, the country, right? We could have differences with ideology, with politics, with the war. Not that we want to go there, but I'm just saying there's obviously disasters in your world.
I don't think people realize that when you were living it. I've stepped in mud up to my waist. How scary that is, and you're going through this like you don't realize. You all of a sudden you do realize when you go, this is life-threatening, and something takes over in your body. It's like I said, it's golfing, the fire's there. I go, okay, this is no more joke. This is getting serious. But with disaster, something else kicks in your body. The adrenaline pumps up, and you just go, I could die. So, I mean, you could have died in the fire. You could have died in the Montecito. You got. What disaster am I missing here?
Woolsey.
The Woolsey, yeah.
Yeah, we've got some guardian angels. I mean, look, we could have easily been on the wrong side of the freeway. We could have been in the wrong area with the fire in the neighborhood. Could have chosen to stay. I mean, it wasn't out of question.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think you can predict it also, Tom, when you have so if we have a dry spell going on, you kind of know there's going to be a fire with the wind, and then following, if there's a rainy season, there's going to be mudslides. Mm-hmm. It all kind of goes. I think this is going to be with the rain, the fire season should not be bad in LA. I could be wrong, but
yeah, hopefully it'll take a year or
rain.
two off. Hopefully. By the way, your son was 3. Jakey was 3, roughly at the start of this. Do you think he'll have any recollection of any of this?
He's a fireman now.
He's got the fire hat, the pictures.
He's kidding, Tom. Have you seen that? When he had his diaper at that, he goes, "Mommy, I want to pee on the fire."
The only way I can relate is what was my first couple memories, and I don't have much recollection when I was 3 to 4. I think maybe because we have so many photographs, it might trigger his memory. It didn't have that growing up. You didn't pick up your phone and say, hey, do you remember this? So maybe that would trigger his memory, but my guess is probably not, but we'll see.
Yeah, but the photo your wife took, though, that should be blown up as a poster. I mean, I can see that. I could see that at restaurant. I could see that anywhere. It's just, like you said, it's a disaster shot, but also a beautiful shot.
Yeah.
I was tracked down by a storm chaser in Australia who ended up contacting me, said it took him like 3 hours to reverse engineer that we took the photo, and said he tracks all of the data around the world and says that he thinks about 1 billion people saw the photograph.
I believe it. Once this thing gets rolling, and Doug touched it up a little. Didn't he put it through a filter?
Yeah, I think he and Sarah were like down on vacation in Cabo or something, and there was a filter on her phone. She said use it. They touched it up a little, and that kind of honestly that did enhance some of the colors a little bit. The photo doesn't need that at all to be so apocalyptic, but it did help kind of enhance it. And there's some cool.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. So this story I did on Grant is about 7 minutes long. It's a great TV feature. It really is. I mean, not because of me, but I mean, you were so good.
You did a great job producing it.
Thanks. And then just the visuals, and you could just really feel the tension. And so I'm going to make sure, follow me on social media if you don't, and I'll make sure that we have access to see this thing.
I just thought of another disaster you cover for your show.
My hair?
No. How many times you see a sinkhole? How many times there's a sinkhole out of nowhere?
Have you seen those lately?
I've seen sinkholes many times. I've seen where the cars have gone in. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I totally do, but I haven't really seen too many.
Oh, yeah. LA is going to have sinkholes from the rain.
Probably.
And there was just, I can't think of what the story was, that just kind of happened. There's a huge sinkhole from the rain, and someone lost their life. But
wow.
Google it, Tom.
No, I know what you're talking about, where a car will just fall into it.
Yeah.
Right? It's terrible. I mean, it'd be another horrible way to go. Yeah, no doubt. What else? I know you are a nutrition expert. If you could give our listening and viewing audience...
Wait, what's his background? Tell me. I'm into nutrition. What's...
Honestly, it's just look, it's a non-accredited, just self-learning and exploration of nutrition.
Yeah, but he's earned basically a master's just on his own study, without a doubt.
Yeah, look, I've fallen in love with nutrition, health, and wellness. I think that if you don't have health, you've got nothing, right? Yeah. Health is wealth. You could have all the money and all the material possessions, friends, family around you in the world, and if you're sick and metabolically unhealthy, if you die young, what good is all that, right? Yep. We want to be here for our loved ones, for our kids, to build memories and relationships. And I think taking care of your body, starting with the proper nutrition, is the most important thing you could do.
I have a Chinese wife, and I'm telling you, everything with Chinese herbs, am so sold on everything. I'm like, everything
Kato,
she does.
I want to learn. I want to be in on that. I really do.
She's right on everything with headaches or everything is weak, and there's disease in everybody. Disease comes out when you eat the wrong food. So
It's inflammation, right? It starts with inflammation.
You get it. You can do your turmeric to get rid of inflammation. There's certain things you do, and I'm so on that bandwagon of all the nutrition, and I follow the certain people on social media.
That's also what's great about some of that medicine in America. There's a lot of great things about prescription drugs and pharmaceutical and surgeries. I'm not knocking that at all, but it's the first. It's the first plan of action. It shouldn't be. It should be like, hey, let's go to the root of the problem. Let's not give you a pill. Yeah. Now, if you need that as an intervention, right, to prevent or reverse a disease, that's fine. That's great. But to say, hey, take this statin or take metformin for the rest of your life, how about we address the root cause of what that is? And usually it's lifestyle, right? It's a diet and lifestyle. And that's where we're missing it in medicine today. We're not treating the problem, we're treating the symptom.
Yeah, a lot of the medicines are from plants. So just eat the plant. So all the medicines are from plant.
Think about it, right? That's what they did.
Well, and now there's a flip side of that, Kato. There are, anti-nutrients. There's defense chemicals in plants, right? There's anti-nutrients, oxalates, lectins, and some people have a sensitivity to those things. And so it's don't eat every plant that you see. Understand your body, listen to your body, because oxalates cause kidney stones. And there's some people that are very sensitive to that. So there's certain foods that have higher oxalates, right? Or nightshades people can have sensitivities to, or gluten. So you need to understand kind of the toxicity spectrum of plants and where that falls, and then you can better understand what to eat.
Told you he was an expert.
Yeah, I'm so.
And also, let's go here for 1 second. I have to, right? I love the idea of an animal-based diet. And what does that mean? It's not pure carnivore. It's not keto. It's not vegan. It's a balanced diet of sustainably, regeneratively raised, grass-fed, grass-finished red meat or ruminants with some organ meat, right? Liver and heart's amazing for. I had 2 ounces of raw liver this morning, half a pound of ground beef, grass-finished, and 4 eggs. Feel amazing. Right? I had my Quinton minerals.
Is that the same thing as a couple Egg McMuffins?
Very similar. Very similar.
And what do the lambs say, Clarice? And then, the lambs say with your liver. And then some sweetbreads, maybe.
But people don't realize, look at the nutrients in liver. If you want to call a superfood, liver is absolutely a
completely.
superfood.
It's very hard to eat liver.
Well, that's why I put it in my mouth, I mince in small pieces, and I just swallow it like a pill with water. I don't chew it.
Different countries eating certain foods that would just turn you off because the cultures are different. Duck neck is a delicacy for the Chinese. Right. I'm not into duck neck and the innards of cows. So what is it? There's a trope. Am I thinking the word? Tripe. It's like things I would never eat. So certain things I don't eat because.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Let's tie all this in behind a scandal. Maybe a pharmaceutical scandal or something, and we'll have you back. And we'll go deep on this.
Well,
let's do it.
I'm sure that some I think Pfizer might be a good start.
It could be. Worse places to start than that. Okay, we all good?
We're good.
Amazing
Thanks for
stories.
having me, guys.
If you're listening, make sure you watch this YouTube episode. And by the way, make sure you download and subscribe. Make sure you follow us. Make sure you give us a nice 5-star review on Apple, Spotify, wherever you listen, Podcast One. And subscribe to our YouTube channel.
Yeah, and I'll be traveling, so look for me. I'm always posting jokes.
Yep.
But I always tie in 1 degree of Scandalous with it. And it is hottest show going, baby. 1 degree of Scandalous.
Spread the word, Grant.
Absolutely.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, thanks so much for Grant. Thanks for joining us today. For the man, Kato Kalin. And Dave, I hope you were listening. We had a lot of good information here today, especially about disasters and nutrition and military war crimes. All affect you somehow, Dave. I just know.
Did he just flip me off?
I don't think so. All right. Thanks for watching 1 Degree of Scandalous. We'll see you next week.